Hello, and welcome to Mythical Creature Comforts. Yeah, I know. It's Tuesday. And yet, here we are recording a video. Schedule's being thrown around. It's fine. It's fine. Just go with it. Just go with it. Okay, so this week we're talking about fantasy dwarves. I specify for people that think I'm referring to other things and I'm not, so go away. So, fantasy dwarves. For those who don't know, in fantasy settings, they are depicted as human-shaped entities that dwell in mountains, the earth, caves, mines, that kind of thing. They're primarily seen as smiths or miners, that kind of thing. They actually stem from, if we're talking about Tolkien's dwarves, they stem from Germanic folklore. So I guess if we're talking about most of the dwarves as we know them, they stem from Germanic folklore. So, you know what I'm talking about. The picture from my opening. They're stocky. They've got beards. All of them, males and females, apparently. They've all got the beard going on. And I'm not judging. They're depicted in armor, usually with a battle axe. All that fun stuff. They're dwarves. You know what they look like. Now, for the literature and pop culture section, we're going to do this in a special way. Not really special, but you understand. We're going to deal with literature, and then we're going to go to the pop culture, and then we'll see if I've been talking for 20 minutes and we're making this a two-parter video for my personal thoughts. Okay, so obviously we have to start with Tolkien. I've never actually read the Lord of the Rings series, or The Hobbit, or the one before The Hobbit that I can never pronounce how do you pronounce the name? I'm sorry. I know a few of you are heartbroken by this, but it's either that or I butcher it. Anyway, so Tolkien's dwarves are very much like the one I've depicted in my opening screenshot there. My personal favorite, just from watching the movies, is obviously Gimli, although his character shift in the movies is interesting. Because he goes from a semi-serious character to Legolas's comic relief. Like, they bounce off each other, but it's purely for comedic reasons. They're keeping count of their kills and competing with how many kills they make, which I absolutely adored, but at the same time. You know Gimli. It's funny how tall the actual actor who plays him is, but that's neither here nor there. Related to Tolkien's dwarves, who, again, they all dwell in the mountains and caves and mines, and that's what they do. They cave, they mine. That's their thing. Terry Pratchett, his dwarves, which apparently were originally an homage to Tolkien's dwarves, which makes a lot of sense because they're basically depicted the same way. However, what I did like that Pratchett did that Tolkien didn't was Pratchett actually addressed the whole male and females both have the beard thing. Now, again, I don't know if it's actually addressed in the books because I couldn't get through them. I'm sorry. Just, more to the point. What Pratchett did with it was he actually had the characters themselves address the issue. My favorite dwarf in the series is, of course, Ciri, because Ciri, she's awesome. She's one of the first dwarves I see who actually she makes herself a dress, she starts wearing makeup, it's the whole kit and caboodle. She decides to embrace her femininity without removing the beard. She still keeps the beard and her identity as a dwarf. But she embraces and acknowledges the fact that females exist and they should be able to feel female if they want to. Whereas all the other dwarves, they don't acknowledge the feminine. They just sweep it under the table like it doesn't exist, although it obviously does. Which begs a few questions that are going to be fun to answer one of these days. And now I'm sad because we were talking about Pratchett and he's dead. Moving on. So since we're sticking with the literary, we're going to go a little outside the box now. The other book that I read that has dwarves is, of course, the Artemis Fowl series by Aaron Colfer? Irish name, and I'm not sure I pronounced that right, but still, moving on. And his dwarves are fun. His dwarves are actually basically mole people. They don't just live in the dirt. They actually consume the dirt. They can unhinge their jaws, and that's how they tunnel, is by consuming the dirt and shitting out the nutrient-less stuff. Everything, the rocks, the gems, everything goes out the back. It's really, really hard to actually picture what this creature looks like. But it's fascinating at the same time. It is a completely unique look, a completely unique take on them, and I kind of adore them, although my heart will always be for the Tolkien-esque dwarves. Now that we've done literature, we can move on to the movies. Other than The Lord of the Rings, because we've already addressed The Lord of the Rings, we're moving past. Going on. So obviously you have Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And also the dwarves in... We're not going to talk about the dwarves in Once Upon a Time, because I hate that show. No, we're not doing it. But we will talk about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in the original cartoon. They're minors. They're depicted with beards, except obviously Dopey, but Dopey is a young dwarf, which begs the question on where did he come from, since the rest of them all appear to be male. Again, that could just be me gender stereotyping because of the beard, but at the same time. The movie, I believe it's called Happily Ever After. It's kind of a continuation of the Snow White, what happened after she's going back to invite the dwarves to her wedding, and instead runs into the dwarfettes. 7 female dwarves with mystical magical powers, who work for Mother Nature. That's the direction they went with it. Yeah, it's about as cheesy as it sounds, guys. But none of them are depicted with beards. They're all clearly female, depicted as feminine, and that's how, well, traditionally they have boobs. That's basically what I mean. They're feminine looking. And it was an interesting take on it as well, because they did bring up the question of that there are males and there are females, and they look different. That's the only cartoon I think that actually does that, but whatever. Another movie reference that have dwarves in them are actually I'm going to say a little known movie, because I don't know many people that actually have seen this movie, called Time Bandits. Basically, the synopsis is there's this child, his parents don't pay enough attention to him because they're obsessed with work and buying the newest gadget to outdo their neighbors, and one day a knight crashes through his house and then takes off, and then after that a bunch of dwarves drop by because they stole some stuff from Father Time and they're time traveling and they want to be bandits. And they go back, they meet Robin Hood, and they steal some stuff and they give this stuff to Robin Hood, who gives them to the poor. But Terry Gilliam decided to put a little joke in there that in order to do it, to take the things, Robin's men have to punch them. I don't know what. Not the dwarves punch the poor people who they're giving, rob the rich to feed the poor kind of thing. It's a fun time. It's a fun time. You should go. You should watch it. Can't really think of any other depictions off the top of my head, which is probably not necessarily a good thing, but there you go. So that's basically what I know them from pop culture, other than from their random other depictions. But they have every other depiction. They're always shown in the Tolkien-esque fashion. Their beards, axes, and all that fun stuff. Now, one of my favorite fellow YouTubers who has actually addressed the whole dwarves with axes thing is actually a channel called Shadiversity. If I can find it, I will link that particular video involving dwarves down below. But Shadiversity, he talks about a lot of the medieval, so weaponry, houses, that kind of thing, artwork sometimes, and he actually has an entire playlist, channel thingy, devoted to fantasy races and the best weapons for them to wield. I highly recommend it. Go watch. Go. And yeah, I think that's where we're gonna stop the pop culture references. Okay, so there wasn't as much to talk about as I thought there was originally when I brought this up. Probably because I thought more authors had used them, and it turns out they didn't. But in my own stories, I do have one particular story where I do use dwarves, but I depict them pretty close to the Tolkien-esque fashion. Now, they are jewelers and metalsmiths. They make swords and amazing equipment and weapons and that kind of thing. But they also dwell in mines and they mine and that kind of thing. However, because I'm particular about this kind of thing, there's actually a difference between the males and the females other than the beard thing. Basically, my females don't have the beard because they're female. Come on, guys. I know there are some women who do have facial hair. And, I mean, there's a whole circus performer thing where you had the bearded lady, and she usually, when they had a woman that had a real beard, it was a real beard. But for the most part, I don't know very many women that can actually grow a full beard. Without taking hormones. You can grow hair anywhere if you're taking the right hormones, I'm just saying. So, they're not a race I really deal with a lot either in that book, because it's mostly about elves. But they are in there, and they are in there a lot more than, say, fawns. They are a race that I do want to play around with a bit more as well, because clearly there are several different ways you can take it without being overly offensive to the source material. The source material being the Germanic folklore, not anything else. So I guess that's where we're gonna leave this, which means, my lovelies, the Jar of Doom. The Jar of Doom, Jar of Doom, Jar of Doom. I don't know, I'm working on theme songs. More than four. Check it out. Keep trying to take away the lettering on the front of the Jar of Doom. Next video will. Oh, that's two. Go. Dun 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 dun. Well, speaking of dwarves, We're going to talk about elves next time. Won't that be fun? Now that I've creeped you all out, I'm Beck Terry. This is Mythical Creature Comforts. Like, subscribe, double tap that bell, because apparently that's the only way you're going to get all my notifications. Share if you want to. Contact me if you want to. Have a great evening, guys.